I can talk about Warlord from my own personal experience. It happened to be during my first trip to Hong Kong. I was on a school vacation the summer of 1972, and I saw 3 movies that summer, which were the first 3 Hong Kong movies I had ever seen. And the third of those was The Warlord, and I saw it at the old Hollywood Theater, which was in Mongkok. It no longer is there. The day after I saw it, the Hollywood Theater had a fire and kind of burned down. So maybe I was at one of the last shows of the Hollywood Theater. When I saw it, at that time, I didn't know anything about Hong Kong movies. I certainly didn't know who Michael Hui was. I thought the movie was hilarious. Now, of course, I know it's Michael Hui's first movie as an actor. Later became a great director and produced his films. And he had already been famous in Hong Kong from television, but I didn't know about his television fame when I went to see the movie. And in fact, looking at the film, I thought he was much older than he really was because of the kind of role that he played in the film. I just thought it was hilarious. And seeing it now, 30 years later, it still holds up pretty well. I think when a lot of people think of 1970s Hong Kong movies, they tend to think of Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan. Bruce Lee was the big box office person in the beginning of the decade, and then Jackie Chan came along towards the end of the decade. I mean, he'd been making movies all along, but he became really popular around 1978 or so, with the Hyena film and the Drunken Master film. But actually, the biggest box office champion of the whole decade was Michael Hui and his brother Sam Hui. They weren't action stars, they were comedians, and I think they were quite unique in their sense of humor, and it was also very reflective of Hong Kong. It really came out of the Hong Kong experience. Now you have to remember, when Michael Hui started movies in 1972, Cantonese films were really dead. They had been very big in the 1960s, and then I would say starting around 1967, well, even before that, but especially 67, 68, 69, Cantonese films really became unpopular in Hong Kong. I guess they hadn't changed that much in the past 20 years since World War II. And the trend became more Mandarin movies. And so you got to the situation where by 1970, almost no Cantonese films were made, and all of 71 and most of 72, you really didn't have any Cantonese films at all. So in a place where 99% of the people spoke Cantonese, you didn't have Cantonese movies, you only had Mandarin movies. And actually most of them were shot silent and then dubbed, because most of those actors, the Hong Kong actors, didn't really speak good Mandarin unless they had come from Taiwan or China. So The Warlord was, I believe, was released in Mandarin, but Michael Hui's comedy is, very Hong Kong comedy, and I think the popularity of his films really helped reintroduce Cantonese cinema, or Cantonese language movies. So by the end of the 70s, you didn't have any Mandarin movies being shot in Hong Kong. Everything was in Cantonese. By that I mean they were really made to be released in Cantonese in Hong Kong and in Malaysia, but Mandarin versions were released in Taiwan and in Singapore. So, back to Michael Hui and Sam Hui. They were just a wonderful team. I think the 2 brothers, well, actually, of course, there's more than 2 brothers. There's also Ricky Hui. But I think Michael Hui and Sam Hui together, they had different qualities. Sam Hui was more the matinee idol, the good looks, but then he had this kooky sense of humor, and great singer. And his songs also, it's not like the canto pop that you have of today, where I would say 95% of the songs are very simple love songs. Sam Hui's songs really did have to do with Hong Kong society, and they were extremely popular. Now, Michael Hui wasn't a singer, and he didn't have matinee idols' good looks, but he had such a great sense of humor and a great, I guess you could say really his hand was on the pulse of Hong Kong. Now, The Warlord, his first film, he was first at Shaw Brothers for a few films. So, The Warlords, and then there was a film called, I don't know what the title in English is, 盛世全马, which was, it had several stories in it. It was also directed by Li Hanxiang. It had many stories in it. I remember very vividly one of the stories, he played a doctor who was being seduced by this young beauty, and that was played by Bai Xiaoman. She was only 19 years old, and it was her first movie, and after the film finished, she killed herself. And that, of course, caused huge waves in all over, when a young, beautiful starlet kills herself at such a young age, and after making such a promising beginning in the movies. So Michael Hui only made about 3 movies, maybe 3 or 4 films for Shaw Brothers, and then he left and went on to greater success. And really, he and his brother are the #1 box office champions of the decade.